Jarret is the DuPage County Chief GED Examiner, and he's the coordinator of specialized testing here at the College of DuPage. Our testing is divided in two parts, the academic side of the house and the specialized testing, and Jarret is responsible for specialized testing. If you do take one of the tours this afternoon on session B, you will see our testing facility as well as some other student support services. Jarret has been our chief examiner for 7 years. He's worked in GED testing since 2004. During that time, he has served on the GED Testing Advisory Council for the Illinois Community College Board and continues to serve on the Grants Committee for the National College Testing Association. So here's Jarret.
Thank you very much, Diane. And truly, I want to start off by saying thank you to all of you. It's very exciting to see the interest in today's event. So I want to thank all of you for taking the trip on a Friday to come out. This presentation is going to be a little bit different. There are actually different parts to it. And the reason for that is this presentation was created specifically for you based on the questions that I have received over the last year. So feel free to ask questions halfway through if you'd like to. What I tried to do is give you a visual walkthrough of kind of what a candidate will see. Not everything, because that'll put us all to sleep, but the key points that we've seen candidates refer back and say, I struggled with this, and then we created a document for them, and then we went forward with the process. So those are the things that we highlighted. But first, a quick agenda. I am going to give you the background as to why I'm here, and then we'll talk about key points in the testing process. And then, as David mentioned, we'll look from our experience after now almost a year of paper and computer, where we at, and then I threw in, because I thought it might be interesting, a report that just came out that kind of highlights 10 years of data between continuing ed, which houses our adult ed and GED departments, my office, and then enrollment, and where we have tracked 10 years of GED test takers through the college process and the numbers that have come from that. So without further ado, actually I do want to have a quick segue. Talking about portability, and I thought we'd open up with this. The nice thing about the new computer-based version is that it does allow a little bit more access. For years, we were the only location for GED testing in the county here at the college. With Pearson, as mentioned, we are now at 4 locations, and we've seen those locations become very active in the last few months. They just came online in March. And also, I had a family in my office about a month ago that said, we're here from Spain for 15 days. My son needs his GED. What can you do? And I said, unfortunately, residency is going to be a bit of an issue. However, by going to GEDcomputer.com, we found a location that was about 2 hours away from them in Spain where they could take the GED in English, and then he was coming back the next year to attend college in the United States. So, background at COD, very quickly. In May of 2012, for those, a quick show of hands, who's here with an ROE? Who's here as faculty? And who here is on the testing side? And who has never seen the test before? Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so this is a bit of our timeline for those of you who are interested. May 2012, we submitted our application. We came online September 28th, 2012, to give you an idea, okay? We delivered our first GED test October 29th, as mentioned. And then we went under construction to create the new location Diane had mentioned. That came online mid-January of 2013. And then in March of 2013, we expanded. So we have Glen Ellen, Westmont, Bloomingdale, and Naperville. So those are our 4 locations in DuPage County currently. That's about as much as I'm going to share with the background. Key points in the testing process. We're going to kind of do a walkthrough. Jennifer shared this. So I'm going to visually, to the best of my ability, walk you through this again from what it looks like from the candidate on the website, okay? We're going to start with registration. This is the home screen. They're going to come on to GEDcomputer.com currently. For those of you who are going to be working with individuals between now and January of 2014, then it'll look like the portal, as David mentioned. The first situation that individuals usually come up to us here in number 1 in account creation is the date of birth question. Individuals that are 16 or 17, they are going to put the data in. Do remind them to put the right data in, because my staff, your staff, will catch them when they come in and give us the IDs. One of the first things we have to do when they're administering the test. So they can't game the system by telling us that they're 18 if they're 16 or 17. So they actually do have to follow the rules. When they go to hit submit and they're 16 or 17, like they had mentioned, it's going to go into an exception queue, and they're notified to contact the ROE of residence, and then actually the Illinois Community College Board. The ROE can assist them with that and provide documentation. This is what they see. It's going to tell them that the candidate ID is required. So this is one of the first points you're probably going to want to prepare them for. They're going to get this email that says they have to log back into, the screen informs them to log back into their email. The email is going to give them more information. This is what the email will look like. It's going to say 16-year-old candidates, if it's Lincoln's Challenge, 17-year-old candidates will be allowed to test if they provide supporting documentation, and they click right there and it goes directly to Leanne at the bottom. Now, if you work in an area like we do in DuPage County, and we have exceptions, as Jennifer mentioned, 16A, 16B, I believe what it is of the school code, then you'll also want to inform your students that that paperwork will go to Leanne as well, okay? When everything has been processed by Leanne, an email will go back to the student. This will go into their inbox. They can click on that link. It's been activated, and they will go forward. After that is registration. Registration's pretty straightforward, except I would recommend to all candidates that they please double check their information, especially this year. If we're looking at a candidate that took it on paper, they probably worked with you in the classroom if you're faculty. If they're now taking on a computer and they're going very quickly or doing it after 11 o'clock at night and they invert their social security number, it becomes an issue later on. So they do need to pay attention to this process. The rest of it's fairly simple, I'll say. We've been very happy with the software. We get a lot of great feedback from the website that individuals say it's easy. This, however, is going to be on that page requesting, if they're requesting a documented disability. This is the screen they're going to see that Jennifer had discussed earlier. If they mark yes, then they're put into an exception queue again. Okay? They're given an email, looks like this. Jennifer said, what we have found, two issues. When they click to download the forms, you might want to prepare them for what that's going to look like. Because typically, if you are a testing location or an ROE, depending on how it worked in your county, you worked through this process with them. Going forward, the GED Chief Examiner section of the accommodations form is going to be removed. So they will work themselves with a psychologist, psychiatrist, medical doctor, or advocate to fill out all that paperwork and then return it. The process, I see some people shaking their heads. The process is not difficult if they're prepared. So there's a little bit moving back on faculty, I'm telling you now, that preparing your students, but at least that's how we've done it here at College of DuPage. Oftentimes we work through the paper-based registration with them. So this allows us an opportunity to work through the computer-based registration as long as it's built into the work plan. Once they are finished, again, Jennifer got approved, and it comes on back. So after that, a quick view of the different content. Question?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
So will there be anything, like I'm a GED ADA coordinator, will that position kind of go away, or will it be required?
An excellent question. The question, if I understand it, is will there be an ADA coordinator with Pearson VUE? Yes. At the state level, no, and at the testing center level, no. My job in the past was, I used to tell people I was a transitional instrument. I would look, make sure there was a stack of stuff, and I would send it on, but I do not have an MD or PhD.
I think your question is more so about the preparation side, and will there be an ADA coordinator still required? Yes, there will be.
Okay.
Because that has to do more with the preparation side than it does the accommodation side.
Okay.
Thank you. When they are approved and the application goes forward, this is what the actual test selection process will look like. Another thing that we get a lot of comments on, do prepare them for the rest of this year. They are selecting the 2002 test. That always is a question for individuals. Next year will be a little bit more conducive to our students. It'll be the 2014 test. They'll select the test that they want to. From our experience, I would recommend that you tell them that to try 1 at a time or 2 at a time, maybe 5 at a time. But if they select all 5 and try to locate an institution that has room for them, they may not be able to get in for quite some time because it's telling the institution they need 7 hours blocked off. Whereas if they select 1, they might be able to do it in the morning, they might do another one in the afternoon, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? David walked us through this. They show the sites that are close to them. They verify their order, proceed to checkout, and then this was a question that came up yesterday, so I did want to address this quickly. A voucher purchase. For individuals that are interested in purchasing vouchers for their candidates, or for candidates, or for test centers that would like to sell vouchers, this is something that we have now engaged. There is this process, and I'll go through it in a minute. A voucher allows someone to pay you directly for a code that will allow them to test. So we get this a lot. Individuals that don't have access or limited access to a credit card or to a debit card of some sort, they'll come in, they'll pay us cash. We've already purchased the vouchers. We'll give them the voucher for their cash. Then they will come in, put in the voucher code here, and then that authorizes them to take the test. And the vouchers are actually really neat. So let's go into that very quickly. Voucher purchase, this is the website. In your notes, I gave you all the links. I didn't think you wanted to see that here. So you have the links in your handouts. And this was too small for the handout, so this isn't there. But this is the first link. This is what you'll see on the first link. It'll tell you about the voucher facts. You do, at the bottom, click step 1, which is look for your jurisdiction. That's Illinois. Illinois, this is the pricing schedule currently for CBT. And what is neat, at least I think it's neat, I find all these things interesting, 25, 50%, and 100% multi-use and single-use vouchers. This allows an organization to either purchase at 100%, which means the entire value of the battery, so 120 for all 5 or 24 for a single, next year 30 for a single, or 50. Say our institution is going to pay 50% of your test. The candidate's going to have to pay 50% of the test, and so we would purchase a multi-use or a single 50% voucher or a 25% voucher. Again, the institution is paying a quarter, and the individual is paying 75%. So however that would work best in your location, that option is available. You simply fill out the voucher sales form for your institution. You can acquire as many vouchers as you are able to, and then either sell them to the candidates at face value. There is no markup, so you know. I'm just saying. Or, actually, yeah, that's really the best model. Yes, Pam, did you have a question? No, this is through Pearson VUE. And the links on my slide all go directly through Pearson VUE. They're itemized out. Didn't need to see them. Any other questions on voucher purchases at this point? Okay. Test day, kind of a visual representation of what you're going to see. Yes, go ahead, James.
Question about the voucher.
Yeah.
So when you get like a 20 or 50% voucher, then when the student goes back to full testing, there will come some screen that says it's time to pay.
Yep.
So they pay, it'll say,
Put in the voucher. This will go from whatever the price is, say 24 for 1, down to 12. Then they'll have to click on MasterCard or payment method, then they'll pay 12. Okay? Yes?
If they make a mistake when they first register by putting the wrong social, misspell the city they live in, how do you go about correcting, or how do they go about correcting, or you and them?
They can correct anything in the testing agencies. They can correct anything in their record with the exception of their name. We don't correct names because that's one of the quickest ways for people to commit identity theft. But they can change their name, their social security number, because it's verified when they are actually admitted at testing. Anything can be changed except for name in the system. If they need to change their name, they would call our call center and submit documentation to then have their name changed.
So if that information came through and Jarret caught it incorrect, he would just tell them to go in, log in, and make the correction.
Yes.
And one of the reasons that I put that out there initially is that does come across our desk quite often. And I encourage you, if you want to learn more about that, to attend Jeff's session on the state database. So let's move forward. Testing. What does it look like for a candidate coming in? I tried to make this as visually appealing as possible. I know we're getting close to lunch. We do, Pearson VUE is very strict. They do need to have their pockets emptied, wallets in a locker, watches off. It's a secure testing environment. So we check all of that, including their ID when they get in. This is us in our testing waiting area. One of the Pearson VUE requirements is that you do have a small waiting area and you do have lockers. If you go on the tour later, you will see this. Then they do need to lock up pretty much everything in the locker. I don't know who this guy is, and evidently he doesn't change his shirt because I'm wearing it again today. So then here you can see, actually this is a very good model. So this is the administration machine. We have a camera. We have a signature pad. This is the erasable noteboard. They do not get paper. They do have to use like a whiteboard to bring into the center with them. We check, take their picture, they sign in, and then someone will bring them in to launch them in. You do need to walk into your testing center because you need to deliver the exam and log in at that computer. So you will have to do some walking. Okay? So then they'll check out. Currently, they get their unofficial score reports, which is what they love. Next year will be about 3 hours. They signed out. They previously signed in, and then we do take the erasable noteboard. And I got to just tell you about this. This is something we completely did not expect. Erasable noteboards, there needs to be somebody to erase them every day. So when you're thinking about your testing center, you actually need to think about these things. You need to erase them. So staff needs to be there to erase those noteboards so you can use them for the next day. It's the little things, I'm telling you. Also, another thing, on testing accommodations at this point, once you get more comfortable with admissions manager, you get a log every morning. If your log has an accommodations form, a button, if there is an accommodated tester coming, our experience has said it's best to go into the system. There's an incident report with that candidate's name on it. Print that out at 8 o'clock in the morning. That gives you everything that you need to know about what they're requesting, what time the reader is coming. Accommodations with Pearson VUE are honestly, it really is. We just had one yesterday. The candidate showed up. The reader showed up. The reader took control and said, hey, listen, we're going to go, and this is what they get, et cetera. And our staff did not have to engage with the candidate as we had before, but it was always that question of, well, can we hire a trained reader? Can we hire a trained scribe? Pearson VUE takes care of all of that for us, okay? Now, score reporting, I'm going to briefly touch on what happens when they're done. Jeff will touch on it more in his session. I'd encourage you to go to that. We have seen that Pearson transmits to Turnkey Solutions, the holder of our database, or the manager of our database, about 1 to 3 days. We looked at an entire week last week, Jeff and I, and about 1 to 3 days. The longest was about 6 days. That was an essay, and it was over the weekend. But usually about 1 to 3 days. In 2014, if you're not going live until 2014, it really is going to be a piece of cake because everyone's going to have new data and it's just going to post to the database and it'll be slick, it'll be beautiful. If you're going live before then, I need to make you aware of our CBT cleanup icon on the state database because it's something that's going to have to be attended to on a daily basis. What happens, and I apologize that this is a little dark, but on the state database, if you haven't seen it before or if you have, there is a new icon. It says CBT cleanup. Here it is a little bit bigger. We didn't have anyone this day. It was very exciting, but we usually do. And on the left, it says computer-based testing data. Okay. On the right is Illinois database data. And someone physically has to look at that and see if it's 2 people or if it's the same person, and the person at Pearson entered the wrong information. Again, this is only an issue that we're going to need to address between now and the end of this year. In 2014, everything's going to be brand new. Correct, Jeff?
And I go over all this in detail.
Yeah, so that's it for me. Okay. Candidate next steps. For 2014, they'll log back in and they'll get their information within 3 hours, probably off their smartphone because they're going to be very excited. Or they'll get them immediately now in for the 2002 battery. If they need to reschedule, they can get back online and reschedule. If not, they need to request a certificate from the Regional Office of Education. The question was earlier, and I'd like to go back to it, how are things working? For us, with paper, My staff would put together a large spreadsheet for everyone that was in the test center. We would mail it to the Regional Office of Education. They would go through, and that was the official notification. Joe and his team did an awesome job. Sue. They would push everything out, and the candidate would get a notification in the mail. That was the system before. Now, going forward, it really is going to be, the onus is going to be on the candidate. So faculty, again, remind your candidates of this, that if they want something official, they might not, they really might not, because they have everything portable now, right? But if they want something official, they are going to need to contact the ROE of residence and request it and pay the fees associated with that, okay? Any questions? Okay, score reporting. Constitution test, as we mentioned, does have to be sent, and forgive me, it is going to the Illinois Community College Board. The ROE can assist with getting it there if that is the relationship you have with them, but the information does need to be, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. Constitution goes to the ROE of residence. They will merge the files, and then the certificate can be printed. If the individual takes it at a center that currently is doing the paper Constitution test, it's automatic. If they took it in high school, proof has to be demonstrated, as we talked about before. So now I'm going to segue to some statistics that I find fascinating, so I hope you do too. But are there any questions on the previous process before we go forward? Okay. Yes?
How long is the check-in process?
You get a 15-minute window. We have 10 seats. Usually 7 or 8 of them are open. That's kind of how we feel comfortable with that 15 minutes. Although the staff, now that they're getting more comfortable with it, could probably do about 11. So it is difficult, and that's part of the management of your center. You really need to look at what's your bottleneck going to be, right? So if you have a very active early morning group in your area, and you know 9 o'clock is probably going to be full, and you'll see this as you go forward, you'll have to limit or maximize your seats by what your staff can do in about that 15-minute window. And about 10 or 11 we're pretty comfortable with, along with other exams. Yes?
How often can you put a schedule on it? Is that for each computer or for the entire center?
It's for each, so each computer is individually.
Could you stagger the schedule by 15 minutes on?
We could, but you got to remember, again, the beauty of this is it's self-selecting. So if you do 9, 10, 11, 12, and 1, but everybody really likes to sleep in, and so they all come in at 1. If you have 18 computers at 1 o'clock, they could potentially all have an appointment at 1 o'clock. So that's something you need to think of. And we found, honestly, the easiest thing is not to try to outthink the system or the candidates. If you open at 9 o'clock, open at 9 o'clock. Close at 5 o'clock, close at 5 o'clock. They self-select throughout the day beautifully. They really do. Okay? Yes?
In the past, when they come in late, like when we test at 4 o'clock, when it's at 4, we don't let anybody in. Is that the same process, or?
There's a little bit more flexibility. After 15 minutes, an incident report must be written. Doesn't sound as bad as it sounds. But it's your communication back to Pearson VUE that something happened. Incident reports can happen for the lights flicker, et cetera, et cetera. You do need to communicate back to Pearson VUE. If it works in your center, you could administer them. And Danielle, help me out. It's within that day, correct? It's that day. If they're a day late, they cannot take the test. But if it's during that day and you know that you're logistically able to handle them, you could allow them in with that incident report. More flexibility than we had in the past. It is quite nice. Now, our experience has been quite unique. Again, we started in October, and we really expected, given the cutoff at the end of the year, that we were going to be swamped paper pencil right now. I mean, like, absolutely destroyed. I remember working with Ellen, and we're like, we're going to have like 5 paper tests. They're all going to be full. Where are we going to put them? There's all this construction on campus. Not so much. We found on paper that we're actually taking away paper test exam sessions because we had like 8 people. We had 7 people. Like, we can't continue this way. So we keep reducing, and we're going to, in fact, reduce more tests this week because the attraction to computer is so high. So what I will try to show you, this is English, and there is a big difference between English and Spanish. So these are the numbers, and I'm just quickly going to show. So here's on computer when we started, the number of candidates in October and how many we had on paper. If we come all the way down to July, this is how many computer unique candidates we had and how many paper candidates we had. This line down here is the number of actual subtests delivered, computer, paper, versus in October, computer and paper. It's kind of interesting, but I think this is a little bit more impactful. The red line is computer-based testers. The blue line is candidates, and frankly, I have to say, these 2 points, I have this table over here to thank, because this and this are all of our adult ed and TCD and other programs that are actually registering their students still on paper in the classroom and in the ROE. So that would have been a little bit more significant if it wasn't for a continuation of that relationship. Now, again, these are the number of tests delivered. You can see a huge difference. Going forward, now Spanish, we have, however, not seen as much migration. It is changing, but the top line are candidates in paper, and we are seeing significant growth on paper right now as we're approaching the end of the year in the Spanish language delivery. I've actually started converting our English sessions to Spanish, and these are the number of tests delivered. So, yes, Crystal.
All right, so we ordered a bunch of vouchers this summer for students that were going to retest, and then everything will change over for January. But if a kid takes a voucher and signs up online and all of that, and says he's going to be there Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and he doesn't show up all day Tuesday, that voucher is done. It's spent.
I'm going to defer to David for that. My understanding is that it is spent if he does not come back.
Okay.
It is spent unless they have extenuating circumstances, if there was an emergency, and they had a good reason for missing it, then they can call Pearson VUE. If you want to file an incident report and advocate on behalf of the test taker that they had extenuating circumstances that led to their missing the test, then you could seek a refund and rescheduling at no cost. But if they just decide to blow it off and not show up, then they forfeit that money. That's happened in a few cases, but I think that's been a valuable lesson for some students. I think some of the GED examiners have appreciated not having to police that anymore and make those judgment calls allowing retest or not. So it would be on them to prove that they had reason to miss the testing session.
And speaking to that, I do have to say, with working with Pearson customer support, they're really good. And they're really well trained, especially in a crisis and working with candidates to get to a resolution that's beneficial for the candidate. So moving forward, now I'm going to segue again. We had looked at paper versus computer. Now I really want to highlight some of the data that I mentioned before about the relationship that we've grown here at College of DuPage, and why, if I may, recommend that as you move forward, if you're a new testing site, to reach out to your adult ed populations, to your community organizations, to really think of it from a candidate perspective of how it can be more cohesive from a candidate perspective. We were very surprised. Dan and I started working on a research project trying to pull numbers and see what happened to the individuals who received their credential at College of DuPage, how often did they come back, when did they come back, and what was the impact on the institution. So the results of that are as follows. The matriculating percentage across a 10-year span was about 25%. So those are individuals who came back and enrolled in undergraduate level classes at College of DuPage. Interestingly, though, because as we know with the population, they wait a full year before they come back. It's a little frustrating, but we have to keep pursuing them. Highest matriculating rates were the second and third year after someone completes the GED. But they stay with us. Now, I need to explain this statistic, so bear with me. In spring semester of 2013, the class that the last time we saw them on the GED test was 2002. Individuals from that class were still taking credits at the college, and they had just in spring semester had enrolled in at least 70 credits at the college. So that's almost 11 years later, still working. So persistence is definitely evident. all of that together has generated for the college over 77,000 undergraduate credits. So when you start looking at that and then you start applying what that means financially for an institution, it is quite impressive. So here, I'll look, this is where we got the information from. This makes perfect sense. I'm sure to all of you, we started, so 2002, about 35% of them have come back, and it scales all the way down. 2012, like I said, only 10% of them come back. Most of them wait to the second year. So this is a little bit more telling, show you where I got the data from. But obviously, our friends from 2002 were able to come back in 2002, but a significant jump from 466 credits to 2,200 credits the next year, and then 1,700 credits the year after that. And then this pattern straight through the second and third year after they last take a GED test is when they are most often seen enrolling in classes at our community college. So for a total of 77,297, I don't know how we got 0.17, but we did. Visually, you can see here, year one, some come back, not all of them, but year two and year three is a very significant time for this population to transition over to college classes. Any questions on the data at this point? Yes?
Do you track at all where they go? Just that they matriculate into the college? Do you track at all what programs or anything like that?
In this study, we did not. However, I believe Dan does have that data.
For those that,
I'm just curious.
those that are accessing the Jumpstart Scholarship money, so that's the group that we can track. So we do have all the data on what programs you're going into, GPA, all that for that particular pool. We can certainly go back and explore that the larger group, but right now we just use that as a pool.
Okay. So, moving into lunch. I do need to keep you on time.
You're doing well.
I'm also faculty, so I figured I had to give you an assignment. What I want to do, and so lunch was designed very specifically today. It's going to be, again, in Waterleaf downstairs. I'll give you a quick heads up. You will go back down to the registration table because it is, now that I thought about it from an outside perspective, you go down a hallway. So that is to the right of the registration desk for the hotel. And then we'll all meet, and lunch will begin promptly at 12:10, just so you know. But before we do that, what I want you to do, and the whole purpose of today, hold on, everybody's getting all excited. Hold on, I've got 10 more minutes, people, come on. What I want you to do, so lunch has been designed with tables of 4. The reason that I asked them to do that and not do tables of 6, tables of 8, it can get overwhelming. What I really want people to do today or walk away from today is to be able to, now that we've had all this content, to be able to think about it, digest it, think about these questions which we're going to go through, and maybe be able to discuss these things. We have an hour and a half for lunch. It's beautiful. It's downstairs. You're looking outside. Stuff yourself, really. And then think about how today and the rest of the breakout sessions and the individuals you're meeting here can help with your location, okay? So right now, before we go, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to start this conversation and kind of go through and see organically where things will go. How will the 2014 transition impact your location? What steps still need to be completed at your location? What assistance do you need that maybe someone else can help you with? And what further questions do you have? No, that's quite okay. So we'll do that right after we answer some questions. I see hands going up. Yes, John.
First of all, I want to thank you for really stepping up here on helping our kids and going through this transition, because it was a big one. I mean, I know, we're spoiled having you here doing this in your team, and then we have it at the state with Jennifer helping us. I mean, it's great. And the one question that I do struggle with or really want to understand is, since you're one of those, you're out front, how many folks have you had that actually have signed up for the computer test and didn't show up, and therefore, more than likely, lost that money? And do you have access to that data as a testing center?
Probably defer to Danielle. We have seen very few people not come. I mean, it's very clear that if they do not show, they will lose that money. So it's a hard question to answer, because those that have gone forward have made the commitment. Okay. As we go into 2014, I understand the conversation about paper will no longer be an option, so a $50 option in Illinois will no longer be an option, only be at 120. But I really have to go back to the data that says they're self-selecting themselves out of paper. It's not, you know what I mean?
I agree with
So-
that. I think that's awesome to see.
Yeah.
I guess when you start economies of scale, right, where this is your only way, I guess, will you have access at least to the data to say, Joe didn't show up today, and
Yes.
and so at the end of the year, I guess, if you say a yearly report, you'll be able to know you probably had 3,000 people that didn't show up, or 30 people.
We can
and from the
access that
state, will the state
data.
have access to overall numbers?
We hope to. We can talk to David about it.
Yeah.
And make sure that that's a report that we can.
Because I just think about our population, and I'd like to see some scholarship money maybe
Yeah.
come out of that
Okay.
penalty,
Okay.
to be blunt.
Yeah.
I-
Okay. Go ahead, James.
I just
No,
had
no,
a quick
please.
question, probably for the two of you.
Yeah.
In terms of what historically is the high school dropout rate historically at this point?
10%.
Yeah.
10%. I mean, we actually, I can answer that. It's 9.3% the last time I checked. It is actually a little bit, 10% is kind of what we think is a national average. You can pretty much go anywhere. It is different in some areas, as we know. But 9.3, we are a little bit low. It's 9.3% in DuPage County. But when you're talking about a county with 1 million people, we're talking about 93,000 people that still need access to these services. So, I align myself with what Joe, about 93,000 in DuPage County. That number actually is a little bit higher than we thought, or it is a little bit higher now than it was before. So I can see that. I can pull daily, actually the reporting feature with Pearson VUE is also, you got to realize how big Pearson is. This isn't the only exam that we do. So the reporting feature is very nice. We can go through and we get monthly statements and it tells us who was there. And I can pull the data and say this person was a no-show for that day. We haven't concerned ourselves, frankly, with it because we don't have a whole lot of no-shows. We had more no-shows on paper. Yeah.
But again, I just think that you may increase, obviously, with that being the only option.
Sure. David, did you want to add anything to that or not at this time?
I think what we're seeing is we see better test takers because all the registration, scheduling, and payments are done up front. And so across the world, we've seen fewer no-shows on computer than on paper because if they have money obligated, and very often they've already paid their fees. And I think one of the reasons why we have fewer no-shows on computer is because they're selecting the date and the time. They're not being told when to show up. So I think that mitigates a lot of that.
And I'm glad you brought that up because feedback that we've gotten, it's a lot of money. So of course I'm going to be here. People are early. And it's kind of nice because they're showing maybe a little responsibility they haven't formerly. Just for me being an educator, I kind of like it. They're here. Well, I'm here 15 minutes early, man. It's $120. I got to, were you ever at class 20 minutes early? I'm just wondering. Because, yeah. So,
But the new normal 1 year from now,
yeah.
be that in the
Yeah.
back of your mind that I'm saving,
Yeah.
or I'm spending this, I'm just this.
Yeah. So, it'll be fun. Well, maybe fun might not be the appropriate word. It'll be fascinating to track over the next year.
I think that one of the major things will be the preparation side, and I think that what we'll have to do is make sure that individuals really understand what they're getting into. And just going to take the test just for the sake of taking the test and you're not prepared to do it sets you up for failure, and that's not something that I think as a state we really want to do. So I think it's preparing them using the GED Ready, official practice test, all of those pieces to help inform. Now, you're still not going to be able to, but it's going to go back to looking at the structures of our adult education preparation programs and being able to prepare individuals for math. They go and take it, they're ready to take it, and then they're moving on to other subject areas. So it's really going to have to be very methodical, and we're really going to have to think some of these things.
I'm with a social service agency, so, being able to just say I have my GED on a job application is what most tomorrow, I need to be able to put on an application that I got my GED. Can you tell me how is it going to be that much harder to pass this test?
Defer to David on that one, or Jennifer. Yeah.
I'll answer in front of her on that. What I'll tell you, and your concern is very valid, and you know, we are concerned about student success. We do not want to produce a test that has performance standards that are unreachable. That being said, if you look over the history of the GED test program, you look at the releases of the different tests, every time a new test was released, additional content was added because, you know, the curriculum has evolved and has become more rigorous over time. What we've seen is, although the curriculum has grown, the performance standard, and we have a graph with this that, you know, presents it very well, is the performance standard kind of nudged up gradually. And although the knowledge, the curriculum, you know, what is out there that could be learned and mastered has grown, we've only seen very incremental increases from test series to test series. 42, 78, 78, 88, 88 to 2002. What we're discovering right now is what has been the change from 02 to 2014. I will tell you that the foundational skills are still there. The foundational skills that must be mastered today must be mastered tomorrow. And what I think you all will see, if you look at the comparison guide, is you will see how the skills performance standards are reflected differently in terms of what's expected for better success in career and in college. So we don't have any reason to suspect that what it took to pass the test the last 12 years is just going to jump. We're going to see some increase, but honestly, I think if most of us think about our adult learners, we see their performance across the board. Most of our adult learners with the right type of support and instruction could probably rise to the expectation. And so that's where our standardization study comes in. That's where looking at what high school seniors are doing, despite the changes in standards, we can only move the bar so much because of everything that we're having to do to educate the masses. But great question, something that we will continue to monitor very closely.
Okay, we do have time for one more question, and we're moving us on.
Can you just talk a bit more about just the capacity, how many computers at one time? Just like to make a sense of the volume. You mentioned 30 computers.
Right. So in our room,
People doing it all at the same time?
you could, but it would be very difficult for your staff, and they might walk out. Because the ability to get 30 people launched in 15 minutes would be a very daunting task. So then people say, why don't you split the schedules? So I say, why don't you just have 15 computers? Because splitting the schedules, then you have a computer that's sitting there that's underutilized. So what we found is it's worked out much better for us. Instead of having everything centrally located, which we used to do 30 at a time, right? But we used to do 30 at a time, 2 days a week for 10 hours each. That's 20 hours a week. We now have an office here that's open almost 55 hours a week. Then offsite, because it does other stuff. We've put them in a facility that does other stuff. So we're open when the college is open. It's not just GED. But then having other locations with other staff that are also doing the GED, but they're also, you know, when you come online with Pearson VUE, you do have to make a decision. Am I going to do GED or am I going to do GED and everything else that they do, which I think at this point is like 2,000 exams, something. We're not sure because they keep coming on board and going off. And so when there are ebbs and flows in all things, and so right now we're seeing that the TAP test, the teacher, what used to be the basic skills, is going through the roof. So half of our clients are GED, half of them are TAP. Later on, we'll see Cisco and CompTIA because those are areas that are supported by the college, and they're funneling their students directly into the testing center. And so by having that capacity and having them open, you can better assist the community and the GED candidates at the same time. So when you're asking actual capacity numbers, it's worked very well for us. We have 10. One's for accommodation, so it's usually offline. We have 7 typically open, and then we have the ability to flip the switch on the 8th and the 9th. But then offsite, they have usually 3 or 4 at each location, but they can control, I'm going to do 1 in the busiest time of the semester, but I'm going to do 4 when I know classes are kind of quiet for 3 weeks, and allow more individuals. A candidate doesn't know. It's a beautiful system. They just go in and be like, I want to take this test. And it just says, these are all your options in this area. It doesn't let them know there's 4 seats or there's 1 seat. It's just, do you want 9 o'clock? And then they go forward and they make that reservation. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think what a lot of folks who have implemented computer-based testing, talk to examiners across the country, you kind of have to, kind of like in paper, you kind of have that communication with your counterparts in instruction as to what your ebb and flow needs to be. And so I think it takes a little bit of, okay, you know that probably November will be a higher testing period because of the end of the semester. You know things are probably quiet January, February, kind of seeing an uptick in March. So I think, as you kind of see the, I don't think we've noticed any changes in when we see surges in testing occurring, just students selecting the new platform. And so I think a lot of what you know from paper historically about demand, you can transfer that to planning for computer. And so you can figure out, okay, if I've got this many computers, in fact, we have a tool that we can send to you that actually you can plug in the number of seats you have, the number of hours you're open, and how many testing hours would that be. Or you could go the other way, this is the number of batteries I administer in a year, this is the number of computers I have, how many hours do I need to be open. So I'll give you my card, I can send that to you, or anybody else that would want it, and that way you can kind of do some planning. But knowing that you, as Jarret said, you control when you can actually add to and take away seats. So if you maybe have 10 online, or 10 available, but you only have 5 available right now, but you're saving the other 5 for when the uptick occurs, you can activate those. So you're still in the driver's seat. That's the most important thing. None of that has changed. You all still make that decision. Just make sure you have enough seats so that Jennifer does not get a phone call.
Okay. And at that point, I actually need to stop the questions in the presentation. Here's my contact information. I will be around throughout the day. But I would like you to take those questions to start thinking. And we have a very nice lunch. We have about an hour and a half until the next session. Lunch will be served in 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to move on downstairs.
And there are
Thank you.
restrooms on this floor, and as you go into the restrooms, into the restaurant, there will be restrooms